Welcome back to another episode of J Crypto. Today I'm here joined by Glenn and Greg from Empowa. Glenn was on the channel, I don't know how many months ago, but it's been a bit. A lot of fun last time that you were on, a lot of impact too. I know that there were some people that really liked our show. And your project is all about impact. So maybe I'll put the first interview in the description so people can check that out too if they want. But now we're joined by Greg as well. So Greg, this is our first time meeting. We were chatting a bit, having some fun. If you guys could just introduce yourselves and maybe just like the brief, we'll get into what you guys have done since our last interview, but what is Empowa? That would be awesome.
Great. Yeah, thanks a lot. Always good to be here and good to see you again. So yeah, my name's Glenn Jordan. I'm the co-founder of Empowa. I'm a Zimbabwean by birth, and upbringing, and an African for most of my life. Recently moved from Cape Town in South Africa to Amsterdam, where I bumped into Greg.
So you recently sorry to jump in there, Glenn.
Sure.
So you recently just moved from Africa to Amsterdam?
To Amsterdam, correct. About 2 years ago, yeah.
Oh, okay. So it was before.
Yeah, before all of this, yeah. So it's a part of it was here. But being a Zimbabwean, as you can imagine, Zimbabweans have very little faith in centralized governmental system. If you know anything about the history of Zimbabwe, it's a fantastic case of how governments don't work. So I think if you want to put into government failures and centralized system failures, you can kind of put Venezuela and Zimbabwe as the poster boys of how governments can take wealthy countries and destroy them, creating massive poverty for the most of the population. So with that, you can understand why decentralization and blockchain technology becomes, for me particularly, really exciting, because it's an opportunity to overcome, Zimbabweans, if you're born in a country which is a random piece of, particularly in Africa, literally you've got people who randomly drew lines on a map, and you can be born on one side of that line or on the other side, and that can impact your life so profoundly in terms of how much wealth you can create, how wealthy you are, how much you can eat, whether you can have a house, and all this constant chat around, sort of, I deserve it, I've worked hard, it's my right kind of stuff, to realize that kind of randomness creates the kind of impact that we're talking about. And Charles Hoskinson refers a lot to, why should somebody born on the wrong side of a line be jeopardized just because they're born on the wrong side of a line? And that's the power of blockchain for me, and the exciting part of what we can do and how we can change things and change structures.
Yeah, no, I love the whole concept. Once I understood the lease-to-own side of, it's very sound. It feels very sound. It's early, and I always try to preface that for the audience, right? Because we're all kind of experimenting. But I did like the substance behind some of the like the kind of the blueprint of where you guys are going with this. But why don't we get over to Glenn? Excuse me, why don't we go away from Glenn and Greg for a second and get him up here and introducing himself too?
Sure. It's always tricky when Glenn and I are both on a call. We even trip each other up sometimes. So like Glenn, also born and raised in South Africa, or in Africa, in my case, in South Africa, moved also to Amsterdam about 1.5 years ago now, so a bit more recent. Previously, I'd been working on a business that was focused on student loans and student funding, and being able to offer interest-free student funding across the continent. Moved over to the Netherlands, connected with Glenn, realized that he was trying to tackle a similar problem, but even lower in the Maslow hierarchy of needs, shelter and housing, and in a Web3 space. So really was drawn to that. And yeah, I think as anyone growing up across the continent, you realize how access to capital or the lack of access to capital so often determines your trajectory. I was dealing in the student lending space where people were getting student loans at 27%, and now you're saying, how do I go ahead and build a career when I've had to take money to study and saddle myself with 27% interest on a student loan? And then you say, okay, let's look at a place like Mozambique where we're starting our housing journey, and people have a home loan at between 20 and 30%. And you move here to Europe as I have, and you hear people getting interest rates of 1.5%, 1.6%,
Yeah,
student loans.
that's
2%.
like the biggest thing too. It's like,
Yeah,
guys, like for people that are listening, I mean, the interest rates on some of these loans are ridiculous, especially when you go into the regions, Mozambique, I guess you just mentioned, but some of the other regions in Africa, especially, is that correct? Like 30%, 20%, like that's on a home loan. That's really high, like for US or other, certain countries. That's insane. That's insanity.
So exactly. So I mean, when you start to say capital is so expensive, we take for granted that you can go and study, get access to education as an example, and utilize that. We take for granted that you can live in your home, enjoy the asset, work towards owning the asset. We just take that for granted in more developed markets. But the reality is, for many in developing markets, that's not the case. So you're saving up for 20 years to be able to buy a home. You're having to build it yourself with potentially inferior building technologies or inferior materials, because that's the only way you can have a home. And so being able to combat those kinds of challenges, really unlocks a whole bunch of potential, because being in a reliable home, being in a safe home, having that safe space, that's a foundation on which you can get a better education, have better healthcare, have better health outcomes, etc. I mean, we'll get into most of that over today's call.
What might be good to go into too, it's my favorite part of this project, and I think it's like so cool when even for younger people in a developed country like the US, like if you're living in a city, if you're able to find a lease to own, that's like the golden, that's like the golden egg for young people in the US, for a lot of different places around the world, for certainly. That option isn't always clear to find. It's hard to find that even in developed countries. But what you guys have done with providing, I guess, that access to capital, right? From, all over the world, people can kind of fund these loans that are given to developers to develop a property where tenants now that lease start to build equity in that home, apartment, however you guys are, maybe building that out in the future. I know that there's been a few cases, and we can get into those. Now people in what are the specific regions, just so that way I don't have to just say like, Africa, what are the specific regions? Like, what are a few of the tests, like regions? Just throw a couple out there for people to hear.
So yeah, we've started in Beira in Mozambique as the case study.
Okay.
And we did that both for Catalyst and now for the next phase. And Beira is two reasons Mozambique, well, a number of reasons Mozambique, but Mozambique is one of the poorest countries in the world. And it has the infrastructure from a crypto perspective, from a financial perspective, is completely lacking. So we knew that if we could do this in Mozambique, in this kind of environment, we could do it anyway. So it was really starting from
that's the exciting part, because what I was about to say is like, that's a golden egg to find anywhere, like a lease to own. If you're a good tenant, if you're working hard trying to build a life, like finding that lower level entry, you can pay your rent, right? And you don't maybe necessarily need all the credit, because they can take it back over if you stop paying. But still, it's like something that people search for. So the fact that you were able to make that a reality, where affordable housing is already very difficult to find, and provide lease to own projects for tenants, is really one of the, like, it's my favorite part, I think, about Empowa. When I think about it, it's like, that's amazing, because if you can do it there, you can do it anywhere.
Absolutely. And the thing that you take into account is, as you can imagine, what happens is, if there are 600 mortgages. Mozambique, the country we're in, there are 600 mortgages out of a country of 30 million people. So that's the banking system. Now, that's non-existent. I mean, that is only the very, very top, at that interest rate, there's no infrastructure to support
30%, right? That's like the current 30% interest rates at times, like 20, 30%. That's insane.
Correct. And so that's why you have 600 mortgages.
Yeah.
That's it. So you can imagine the banks have no mortgage infrastructure. They have no mortgage. So nobody knows how to do a mortgage. You can imagine that so everything becomes limited. That's in the financial sector. Then in the building sector, why would you create housing? Why would you build housing? You only create housing for people who can buy it cash. So you create for the top end, but you don't create for the affordable level, for the middle class. So what we call the working poor, which is the middle class in any other country. Nurses, teachers, that
the
kind of thing.
Run the jobs
Exactly.
for the country to function too. Like
exactly.
This whole thing is like, it's all connected. Like this needs to be solved in places around the world, and the place that you're starting, if you can solve it there, you can solve it anywhere. I really like that, by the way. Yeah, but keep going, Glenn. Go on.
Absolutely. So you can imagine, why would a developer exist? You can imagine, so a developer, to borrow money to build a home, has to pay 30%.
They wouldn't live there. They'd be developing somewhere else, right?
Exactly. He's not going to do it. So the whole thing around it is by this, we're enabling the developer to develop the house for offtake through this lease-to-own process. And that's a key part. So you're building the chain. So you're building the capacity at each level. And that's what's really exciting about what we're doing. So we're supporting the developer as well as the end user through this process. So we're creating capacity to build, because just throughout Africa, if you exclude South Africa, Kenya, and Egypt, there are literally only a handful of players on the continent who can produce more than 100 affordable homes in a year. That's why there's a backlog of 50 million homes in Africa. So because there's no capacity to do that. So it's one of those things where there's so much systemic failure that and whenever I've just returned from the World Urban Forum in Poland, which is a conference around urban development and housing. And what they talk about there all the time is, we need to change policy. We need to do this, we need to do that. But nothing changes. In 20 years, nothing changes. Governments don't change. We know that. So the thing around this is, how do we empower people to create the change that they seek? And that's about creating a flow of capital that supports them in what they're doing. Yep. Exactly. Supports them in what they're doing from the bottom up.
Yeah.
And that's the exciting part.
And to that point, Glenn, I mean, I think something that would have launched since you last came on the call is we've actually partnered with EBU, which is the European Business University, to launch the Affordable Housing Academy, because Glenn, touched on it. To talk to the point, capital is critical, right? Without the capital, nothing's getting built. But when you only have a handful of housing developers who understand affordable housing, who understand the challenges that go into it, to understand how to cost and build out a project, if you don't have that, then you can have as much money as you want, but who's going to do the work on the ground? Yeah. I mean, to iterate, Empowa only finances, we don't build on the ground. So really looking at this problem holistically, we realized, well, actually, we need to help educate affordable housing developers. It's the affordable. We found partners. We've launched the Affordable Housing Academy. We're financing. I think it's over 30 students going through that from all over the continent, getting them upskilled, helping to get together a business plan and evaluate, what it is they're going to be doing on the ground, and then picking, from that pool who are the most likely to be successful and supplying them with the funding. So these are not people who are straight out of school. They are developers, they have backgrounds, they worked in real estate, etc. But maybe the nuances of affordable housing, that's where they can be upskilled. So we're taking people with a track record, we're upskilling them in line with the challenges that need to be solved. We're raising the capital and hopefully deploying that very, potent combination on the ground. So yeah, I thought maybe just talking a bit about the holistic view that we're trying to
Right,
embrace
because
here.
the issue that when you probably, entered with this beautiful plan that you guys came up with, it's like, wait, where'd all the developers go? Well, they weren't incentivized to stay there. So
Exactly.
you need to figure out all the different, components of growing this seed of a project. So the soil, the water. So I like that you're actually tackling that yourselves too. That's so interesting.
I
Yeah.
mean, when you talk about affordable housing and approaching it in a different way, prior to our partnership, well, prior to Caswell, who is an affordable housing developer that we've partnered with in Mozambique, and they were an existing developer before we came along, so not somebody who came to the academy. But prior to them applying themselves to this problem, an affordable house in Mozambique cost $55,000. That was an affordable house. Through their approach, so they're using like golden techniques, etc., they've got it down to $10,000. So now you're making a truly affordable product that is funded in an affordable way. And that's the difference between a person who's focused and understands affordable housing, building affordable housing, versus somebody who's built housing, trying to build a house that they think is affordable.
Oh, and with all, no, I agree. And with all the new materials that people are using this day too, it's like, to know about the, some of these environmentally more friendly materials are actually way cheaper, way more efficient. So like to have your pulse on that is pretty important too. So I could see the kind of the value of I guess building your own funnel of developers too, and giving them, obviously they're getting something huge out of this, especially if they're scholarshiped and in going to school and learning these skills. So if they're previous developers too, and you're just giving them the extra tools, that makes a lot of sense. So really interesting stuff. Now, Greg, what is your role and what is Glenn's role one more time, just because
Sure.
maybe you guys have multiple?
Yeah, I think as with anything early stage, we wear multiple hats. I tend to cover anything operational, partnerships, marketing, a bit of a catch-all. So, but yeah, I suppose I'm focused on making sure, not on the ground delivery because we have somebody focused on that, but we deliver as a project, and also that we're speaking to the right kinds of partners to enable collaborations. And I think we'll almost definitely touch on this later in today's call. But for example, the partnership with World Mobile, that's that's something that
It's a big
sits
deal.
squarely with me and my team. Glenn, what do you do?
I watch Greg work. It's fantastic. He does fantastic job, and I sit back and take the kudos.
Oh man, I think Glenn, you have the dream job. No, we're all joking because I think Glenn, he's the guy that I first heard about Empowa from in that room in Catalyst. I don't know if you remember that, but I remember asking questions way back when. So
yeah, absolutely.
I know that you work hard. But
yeah. So I'm the co-founder and effectively, I suppose, on the title, as Greg says, we do everything, but it's really my job is effectively CEO, I suppose, is to drive the entire ecosystem to make sure that each element is being addressed. So Phil, the co-founder, is the CTO. He's an Australian. And we met through Cardano. We met on the Cardano forum, and that's how we met. So we're a Cardano COVID love story.
Love child.
Yeah, exactly. I'm saying love story rather than love child. Thanks, Greg.
I call it, one of the first groups really is what you'll be known by in future years too. It's amazing the collaborations that have manifested from Cardano and just hanging out in the community, speaking to each other. Some of these teams that have come from that, it's insane. So,
it is amazing. And so we've now got exactly that, virtual team scattered all over the world of amazing people who are really passionate about this project and what we're doing. So that's my role, but part of really one of the areas I'm focused on is the long-term aspect as well. because we always said we know that there's three areas. If you look at our white paper, in terms of the NFT collection, if you like, which is the source of capital, because this is only going to work if we really drive it at scale, and that means we've got to really make it attractive for investment on an ongoing basis. While the impact is really, I mean, it's everything.
And potatoes. You got to have sizzle.
Yeah. Exactly. So we've got to be able to drive that from an investment perspective, because it's really going to be the institutional capital at the end of the day that is going to really take this and notch it up a complete level.
You think so? Yeah, that makes sense.
So a lot of what I'm doing is laying the foundations right now for that work. So it's really putting that in place so that as we go down the line, because there's a lot of institutional skepticism.
Right.
We are trying, what we're doing is innovative, it's different, and it's utilizing the technology in ways that haven't necessarily been done before. It's very
new. It's very innovative. It's very new. So I could see how that is. If you see that as like the main source of really taking this thing to the next level as institutional capital, I could definitely see how a lot of it would be wise to spend that time to figure out what they need to see / implement those changes.
Exactly. And that doesn't differ. I mean, obviously our current investors, the collectors of NFT type collectors,
right? They still have
information.
Yeah,
exactly. And it's still information. It's still what they want to see. Yeah. But we know, as you say, there'll be more information. There'll be more, it's going to be, there's more that's required. So, if we start there, get that understanding, and then we can build that into the platform as we go, then we're laying the correct foundations. So there's a lot of work going into that, a lot of laying the foundations. Effectively, kind of what we did with Catalyst. Because with Catalyst, we were trying to show crypto community that we could deliver on the ground with partners. Through partners, we could deliver on the ground. Because the crypto community goes like, how are you going to build a house in Africa? We go, we're going to use someone to say, well, who do you know? How are you going to, how can you trust? So there's a lot of mistrust there. And then on the ground, you go to a housing developer and say, listen, we're going to fund this through crypto. They go, oh, listen, those moon boys, we know they're just into super profits. They're drug dealers and money launderers. So we don't want to speak to them. Well, we don't speak. So and we were building that trust on either side. And we're doing a similar process now in institutionalism. This is what we're doing. Watch what we're doing. Observe what we're doing. See what we're doing. And, tear it to pieces. Shoot it down. Tell us what we're doing wrong. Tell us what you need in order to make sure that we can make this work. And it's that kind of, so we're starting that process now.
But I mean, it's interesting what Glenn says about using technology and earning trust. I think we built some houses for the Catalyst proposal. We took that back to the crypto community. We said, look, your ADA did that. And then, building trust in Africa across the continent. Glenn and I, who both worked in the continent, a lot of people come with a lot of big promises, and often those people come from developed markets promising tons of aid. And then once they've got their promotion and moved to another country, that aid dries up. So there's always a healthy skepticism in Africa, and like in many places in the world, money talks. And our boarding partner on the ground, Richard from Caswell, he had his healthy skepticism until we were helping with kind of an early stage in the project, and NGO where they had raised some money from sent some capital across, similar amount to what we needed to send across, and those finances had been held up in the Reserve Bank of Mozambique for 6 months. The money had been sent, but it was coming next week. It needed to be processed. A form needed to be signed. All the usual runaround. We sent a similar amount of money through the blockchain, offloaded it in Mozambique, and 3 days later, Richard had the capital in his bank account. And I think that's when it really clicked for him. And we have some really nice audio clips for his phone call where he goes, I get DeFi, I get crypto, I get Web3, I get decentralization. It makes sense now, right? There's a real use case. And his conversation to us has always been, if all Empowa did was just move money in an efficient way, Empowa would have a great business.
that's like at the core, like the thing is capital accessibility, man. It's like the it's not the core itself. To me, the core is that and the holistic view you guys have that I'm now understanding. Just even in this phone call, just like
Sure.
listening, I'm like, yeah, this is probably the best way to solve it, because it's not like these other infrastructural problems that have led to this great disaster of 30% interest rates are going to solve themselves. And they've already disincentivized enough people that are part of that shade to making this thing work. I do want to just say, I think that this has been a great conversation. And as we shift to World Mobile Token and some other partnerships, and some other announcements, I just wanted to say this is I think is really good, because there's quite a few concepts just by understanding Empowa that I think helps financial education. And I'm really big on that, because I don't know like if you guys have experienced this, but there's a lot of people even in Cardano that just haven't had a ton of exposure to financial education. And I think they really, appreciate it. And maybe they came in for the art or some other aspects of this industry, but it all is important to kind of, in my view, at least, to understand all these different benefits and kind of moving pieces. So the financial education in this beginning half has just been awesome. I think that, I think people will really find value from it. But yeah,
absolutely. And just to that point, just one thing I always want to highlight, I've highlighted the backlog of 50 million homes, but often one of the questions is like, well, aren't you scared of the banks? You're competing, you're going up against the banks. And we go, no, we're not. No, we're not. It's we're going into markets that are completely unfished.
The banks can't take that risk from, well, the banks can't take that risk apparently, right? Because they're charging 30% interest rates. So it's like you're just getting accessibility of that capital from other places. And that risk, it's kind of fun when we look into that and the native currency of these places and like how you guys are thinking about inflation. But to move away from that for a minute, I just wanted to really touch on World Mobile Token, if that's okay.
Sure.
Absolutely. So
seems like a huge deal. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
I'll talk about how we went on that journey. So, kind of early on in our project's life cycle, we realized that there were a lot of projects who were approaching challenges in the same way that we were. For-profit businesses that were trying to make a social impact, trying to offer earn with impact products, a way to get rewarded, but at the same time change people's lives fundamentally. And so we realized that as more of those projects were successful, not to be too altruistic about it, but rising tides lifts all ships. Mm-hmm. And so we along with some other projects spearheaded Blockchain for Good, which was an idea to have a blockchain agnostic collective of projects who were all trying to solve real world problems. World Mobile was one of the early partners on that. And as we got to have more productive conversations and understand their product more and their vision and their roadmap and their plans, and they got to understand us, it started to become a bit of a no-brainer. I mean, even being in the community, were kind of like doing the When Empowa World Mobile, collab. And so, one of the things that World Mobile is really focused on doing is providing affordable decentralized internet. For Glenn can attest this, whenever we have a call with the team in Beira, we need them to have better internet, and more reliable and more cost effective. So there's clearly a need, and we articulated that to the World Mobile team.
Was the screen turning off in like an interview? Was it just like no reception? Was it just?
I mean, everything.
Yeah.
Everything and more.
And internet is turning into an essential. Like this is how you compete in the world. This is absolutely how you compete. Is you got to get on Wi-Fi and talk to Glenn and Greg and
absolutely,
or like something else. But that's how you access information and compete. To your point.
I mean, just as simple as if Richard does want to have these kinds of conversations with people in developed markets, and his internet's constantly cutting out, as an example. It immediately just creates a barrier. and that's true
Like,
of,
it's like almost it's like real estate and internet are now, they're on that, Maslow's pyramid you're
yeah.
mentioning, it's like basic needs at this point.
Well, you've seen the meme where Wi-Fi is put at the bottom, and I can, anyone who's had poor internet will attest that they sometimes feel like it is the real bottom of the pyramid. So, we said to them, look, we're doing this development in Mozambique. There's a whole bunch of potential customers for you there. It's underserviced. Come have a look. They came to have a look at Beira, and they were, well, this is prime market for them. It's very concentrated as an area. It's got poor connectivity. It's actually a good thoroughfare for many other African countries. There's a lot of traffic going through there, actually on the ground traffic, which makes connectivity important. And so they said, well, yeah, how about we enter into a partnership where we use your houses as the on the ground infrastructure on which we can build our air nodes and have your developers step in and helping us to maintain that infrastructure and all the journey around their projects. We said, well, yeah, I mean, let's finance these houses in Beira, Mozambique, and let's launch. Maybe this is ambitious to say, but the first Real.Fi NFT, which is enabling affordable housing and affordable internet connectivity in Mozambique. And they were like, yeah, let's do it. And so that's how this first NFT impact card came about. I think what's really innovative about this NFT is it has all the things that you would usually get in an NFT. Biased, I know, but we think the artwork's pretty cool. It's a tesseract that goes into a seed. It's well worth seeing. We have videos of it, but also there's a whole story behind it. It's enabling the Cardano story of real world impact on the ground in Africa. Everything that Charles has spoken about in every one of his AMAs, we see this as a real world implication of that. And it's the first, right? You have, I suppose, the bragging rights of being able to say, hey, I helped to fund, decentralized internet and affordable housing in Mozambique, and was, the first project to that. I mean, we're going to go back and see which was the first NFT minted. There'll be 3,000 in total. But I mean, imagine you were the person who got number one of the series. That's some pretty cool bragging rights. So all of that is the usual NFT stuff. It's the artwork, it's the rarity, it's the bragging rights, it's all of that. And then attached to that, we're saying, well, how can we reward those who've helped to enable this? And that's where the predicted EMP returns or rewards, the impact rewards that are associated with them come in. So, we think as an NFT, it's a pretty interesting, cool, and collectible piece of Cardano history. But then you've got the rewards return potential associated with it. And we think that that's quite an interesting combination. We'll have some collectors who want just for the potential of EMP, which is paid out over the 10-year period. And we have some people who will purchase it just for the artwork, the bragging rights, etc. And we'll have some people who collect it because you're getting both, and that's pretty cool. Double threat.
So what was really interesting about this too, so there's the NFT side of it, but what I think is, and that's cool, I'm glad that you highlighted all those different aspects, and yes, that'll be fun to take a look at some of the visuals. I'll definitely lay them over at some point in this clip, but there's this interesting thing that's happening here, in my opinion, and it's really big. It's you guys working in this one market, a world mobile token working in several markets, and basically using your combined knowledge, though you're not part of the same project, to kind of integrate both of your values into a certain part of the market that maybe World Mobile Token isn't really as familiar with as you guys, or vice versa in future collaborations. And I think that's a pretty big deal, because that's kind of like this interesting little thing happening here on Cardano. And I mean, both of these companies are dealing with people's needs, right? We classified Wi-Fi as a need, so I guess that's a need. Yeah. Real estate's a need, obviously. Yeah. Shelter's a need. So they're very scalable projects. So you almost could look at this like the story that, before we get my head is like, is this the beginning of like these Real.Fi superpowers that will just like kind of meet up and like help each other out and support each other, starting on Cardano?
Well, I mean, I think that, I think that that's part of what drew us together in blockchain for good, was this realization that, uh, you know, there's like this African proverb, which is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And,
That's good.
we may, in reality, we probably could have got our NFT out sooner if we had just done it ourselves. But would we have made as much of an impact? No, we would have had just housing and not connectivity. So yeah, it took us a couple of extra months, as you can imagine, collaborating with another big project like World Mobile, but we're going further, right? And, of course, we can only, we are still very early on, we're only 48 hours into the NFT release, and it's all in phases, and the World Mobile community are going to have their own exclusive access. But you can see how, assuming that this goes well, why future projects that we have earmarked in Kenya and Uganda and South Africa, why, there can't be similar partnerships.
If you're familiar with different markets too, right? I mean, maybe Glenn, I don't know if you have anything to add on this, but I think this is a major deal. Like this is like a pretty big, just looking at, okay, if this continues, if these two projects continue to share knowledge, work together, and it works, and it creates these benefits, then that could turn into something pretty large pretty quick. I mean, maybe not quick, but like it could go pretty far. It could go
because it's real world, it will be slower than the crypto space. That's the reality. So because it's real world, there's physical infrastructure, there's physical challenges on the ground, etc. Real estate doesn't move quickly. But what you say is so fundamentally true. This is life-changing. And just I always give you this crazy figure, just in terms of what we've done now with this NFT sale. It's ridiculous on numbers. Okay. It doesn't make any sense, but we're funding 30 homes as a starting point, a minimum of 30 homes. That's a 5% increase in the home loan industry.
Yeah, because there's
600.
There's like 600 mortgages a year, so like 30
exactly.
homes, they just
it's not a year. It's not a year. There's 600 in total.
600 in total.
Total, not a year.
Okay. So just for the audience, like these guys have just increased the amount of like, well, we'll see, but if everything gets built, you just increased the market basically by 30%, essentially.
It has been built. They have been built.
Yeah.
So the 30 homes
already been built.
Have been built. So we had to give a commitment. Again, Greg was talking about lack of trust. So we had to give the assurances that it would happen. And so for that, we got assurances that we could deliver. So we effectively got an underwriter. We got supported to underwrite the NFT sale. So we had a corporate who underwrote the sale. So now this sale, it's so that we could guarantee to Casa Real that we would deliver the funding. So based on that, they built the houses, and therefore the people have already started applying and starting to move in. So they're actually already starting to move into those houses as we speak.
So you've increased the amount of houses by 5% because you've taken
amount of home loans. So we provided 30 houses, 30 homes. So we provided 30 home loans out of 600. So that's the 5%. And I mean, it's ridiculous numbers, and in terms of quantum, but if in terms of scale, what we're talking about, that's why I'm trying to highlight it. Right. Because it's a 5% growth in the home loan market in a country
like that. Dude.
Like that.
You guys haven't been around like a super.
We haven't been around a year yet. Yeah. So the point is what can we achieve in the longer term? So to your point around the potential of what's happening, that's really why I'm highlighting that. If we can achieve that in 12 months, the scale of what we can achieve is actually it's actually really, really exciting.
I think the thing to really get your head around is there are people living in homes in Mozambique, of course, and we're not servicing the homeless, we're serving the underserved, low, middle income consumer. But how have they had homes in the past? They've either saved up to buy that house in cash. So just these 30 home loans, we have reduced the average age of the homeowner by 20 years. So typically, you're looking at 40, 50 years old in order to be able to have saved up enough to be able to afford the house. Well, now, obviously, because you, as we're all accustomed to, living in the asset as you pay it off, we've reduced the age. Many people who then do get access to some land have to go ahead and build these homes themselves. That's the most affordable way to do it, but they're using inferior materials and they're not builders. So of course they don't, if I had to build my own house, it wouldn't survive the night. Now, Mozambique is very climate affected, which means that almost annually there are cyclones that devastate the country. And if you've built a house yourself with improper building materials and improper building techniques, you can imagine what happens when a cyclone pulls
flooding, leaky
roof. It destroys the house. So not only do you lose your home, you also lose everything that you have within your home because it's waterlogged and damaged, etc. So by being able to build an affordable home with proper building techniques, you not only allow somebody younger to move into that home, but you also allow them to have something that is actually safe for them to inhabit. And again, we're talking here about teachers, we're talking here about nurses, we're talking about policemen, who previously have only had access, to the options I just mentioned. Save up, try qualify for a ridiculous home loan, and you're not going to because they are 600 and
if I may too, the biggest thing as well that I think about is the reason it's so hard to save up is because most of these people are maybe renting, and if they're renting, then they're and it's not a lease to own.
Exactly.
That's like the secret killer punch. What I hear about this project, that I'm like, this is why they're able to give these loans and feel safe about it to these developers, because a lease to own gives the developer the ability to still, own the property, but there's such high demand and you can make it affordable, where these people that are basically running the, whether they're teachers, policemen, the people that are actually running the, the place, right? It's kind of like they're in a stable enough position where they can start paying rent without having to, lose any equity or potential savings that they could then buy a home with. They're paying their rent and gaining equity every single paycheck that they pay their rent for a 10-year period. I mean, it's amazing.
And again, sorry, Greg, I just want to chat to that. You talk about the scale, you talked about the excitement. When Casa Real, when it came to marketing, when it became real for him, he said, I can't market this. He said, I cannot market this. We will be flooded. So I'm just going to put out the word. And that's what he did, was he just put out the word. And by the, there was some initial, is this true? And then once it started getting out that it was true, okay, literally within weeks, he's had to shut it already, to shut the pipeline. So he's closed off the pipeline at 50 applications.
For tenants, just to clarify?
Of potential tenants.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's no marketing campaign. It's not like we've got to get out there and put up billboards and whatever else. It's just put it out there and it's just wagga. Because there's trust and there's a product that's affordable, and just all the realities that you're talking about. That's the level of pent-up demand.
Yeah.
Oh man, like even in a developed country, you say lease to own, I mean, people will be bidding on their rent, like, hey, I'll go 100 higher, or I'll go 200 higher.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's in a place that has real demand, has a real need for this. It's not about that, right? And I feel like there's probably a lot of incredible options for tenants, and not everyone's going to be able to, get in, get a property and be able to lease to own. At least not yet, until you guys scale. But yeah, since there's that demand, there's probably a ton of hardworking citizens and they just want to live their life. They want to do what they do and have some shelter. Maybe they have kids, families.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think Glenn has maybe forgotten that there was a small amount of marketing done. So Richard's daughter, who's 7 years old, she went to school to do a show and tell about what her dad does. And as best as a 7-year-old could explain the lease-to-own model, explained it to a teacher.
The best marketers,
And then,
by the way, the kids.
And then her teacher, who I suppose had to believe what the daughter had said, came down to Richard's office and said, well, she would like to sign up, and then brought a fellow teacher. And I think there's now a bit of a, there's a bit of buzz within Richard's daughter's school with all the teachers who now want Lease to buy homes. And there's conversations happening with the school around how they collect the payments direct off salaries and stuff. But that is the level, and people often say, there's always the trust element. How will we know that people will pay back their monthly payment? And the reality is, you are spoiled for choice in choosing a tenant. It is such an opportunity for that tenant to own the asset that the cost of not making a payment is so much higher. It is not like I'll just move to another place that is as good. And then if you start to include things like digital identities that are on the blockchain and being able to keep track of that and building up a track record, which is obviously another part of the project.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because there's so many innovations that the blockchain can actually do for real estate. And when you talk about, big fi, right? Big finance that can leverage their capital, and that's going to be what really changes the game. We talked about that earlier. It's funny where we see like the tenant situation in certain places in the US. There's this fear factor for investors that, oh, well, I've done tenants, but I've had some bad tenants, I've had some good tenants, but the difference, I think, is where we're talking about in Mozambique is this sort of true demand that is truly, it's not a luxury, it's a need, because you have a ton of citizens that are working very hard, and there is not enough affordable housing, and there's all these tenants that are employed, can pay their rent, right? And it's changing the communities because you're adding these well-built properties into the community, which is better long-term. They're not going to get ripped out by a tornado. And there's just a lot. Is there any challenges that are kind of in your way? Because there's just you guys always get me too excited, and I just want to kind of I want to see, like, is the challenge getting traditional finance players? Is that kind of like, maybe it's not really a challenge though? It sounds like you guys have a path. So I'm just curious, is there any challenges that are like kind of unclear how you're going to navigate yet, or is it kind of like, what's the lay of the land?
I think there are a lot of challenges, and a lot of the stuff. So really the thing around it is because it's Real.Fi, there's lots of learnings to do on the ground. So just to give you, what is the legal agreement between us and the developer look like? What does that look like? What is the legal agreement between the developer and the lease-to-own client look like, in a way that we're comfortable that what they're providing is passed on? Okay, from a legal perspective. So how do we make sure, because people ask the question, in terms of how do we ensure that flow, we can monitor it on the blockchain, but what's the backup? What's the off-chain stuff? What's the off-chain stuff?
Is there an underwriting process with the developer? Is there's a vetting process? But
absolutely, exactly. So it's all of those pieces to put in place. It's what's the tech look like that sits in the front end, whereby we monitor those payments, et cetera, et cetera. So
you want like it all to go on chain. You think that's the best direction for this?
So for the financial information particularly.
Yeah.
The rest of the information is going to be localized, we're expecting, but that again is part of what we need to test. How much do you put on chain? How much do we put off chain? These are things that we've got to start testing, that we've got to start going through and through iterations. How do we get those flows back? The country, yet what happens if there's fiat that we need, So there's lots of practical realities on the ground that we have to address. There's lots of, processes that we've got to look at. And that's why we're trying to learn by doing. That's why it's so important that, this NFT we've launched together with World Mobile, get affordable internet, affordable housing, that's great. But how do the flows look? Well, we're not sure yet. Let's bed that down. What can we offer? What can we offer the end? Sorry.
No, I was just about to say, like, I think that it's good that you guys are being transparent about that, because number one, I think it's the best strategy for what you guys are doing and trying to do. You got to just try things and see how they work and evolve from those things, because you're exploring brand new territory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so one of the challenges, for example, is what do you give back? What do you say we can give back? So, you know,
Yeah, how do you say it, right? It's
exactly. How do you say it? How do you determine what that is?
Right? Yeah.
Exactly. So exactly. We're not a security. We're not a security. We can't guarantee any feedback, you know, any returns.
Right.
But obviously our objective is to maximize impact, maximize reward in a way that makes it attractive. But how do you communicate that effectively? That's part of the process, that just by learning, by doing, we're learning sort of some of the, you know, some of the comments from the community, the feedback. That's what we're doing, is, you know, putting it out there, saying, thanks for that, you know, great feedback. We can do better on the next one, so that we can communicate that better and put these steps in place. So it's really, so there are lots of challenges. Yeah. Lots of challenges, lots of opportunity, but it's learn by doing. That's what we've got to do, and the way we've got to do it.
Yeah, they got to make a class for that, man. Like how to sell things in Web3, because there's so much vaguity. And honestly, it comes down to having some trust for, like, if I'm part of the community, like some of it is kind of like, okay, this is their vision. How can I how can I perceive this? It's not a promise. This is where they're trying to get to. So if I'm supporting them, I know that there's no guarantees. They might even pivot a different direction that I don't expect, but this is kind of where they're going. And that's like what you kind of buy into. But go ahead, Greg, too, because I know you have a different point.
I mean, I'll just touch that and then I'll add my point. But, you know, it's when you support any early stage business, you know, we hear it time and time again. VCs, they go after the founders, they buy into the vision. You know, no, anyone who's been in and around even traditional startup space understands that, you know, no one can have thought through every single challenge. If you sit there thinking through every single challenge to its conclusion, you will A, never start, and B, have got it wrong. Because, and I mean, I can give you one example of this. You know, we, as part of our Catalyst houses, built two kinds of homes. We built a stone brick home, and we built a wood home that was made out of you know, carbon neutral wood that was made to be more eco-friendly. And we did that to test the market's response. Now, I'll be honest that if I look at the two homes, I would rather stay in the wood home. It's more visually appealing to me. It's, you know, it's what I would associate with going on safari. When I used to go back in South Africa, it has that feel to it. But for our customer on the ground, they look at this wood home and they say, I've saved up, I'm purchasing a product, you know, I'm purchasing a home. I don't trust a wood home. I don't trust it will be as stable. I don't trust it will last as long. These are untrue, but, you know, this is perception. Therefore, I am not in the market for a wood home. I'm in a market for a stone home, a brick home. And that's a learning. That's a learn on the ground. Now, if we had gone and built 2,000 wood homes because they were more environmentally friendly and we thought they looked visually very nice,
and they are durable too, right?
They're durable, they're treated. I mean, they have all the usual qualities that the brick home has. They're just made out of wood. Same thing, you know, we build a lot of sustainable infrastructure into our developments, whether that be water treatment plants or solar panels on the roof. And again, you know, you go to the person who you're trying to sell the home to and you say, this is a solar panel and it's going to make the house more green. That doesn't resonate with them. They're not concerned at given where they are in the challenges on day-to-day in their life about environmental impact.
They don't care about all the bells and whistles. They're just trying
we made that problem build in developed markets, all the concrete homes. Now they must have a solar panel to rectify it. They don't think they're like that. But if you say, look, the solar panel is going to give you more reliable electricity, it's going to reduce your utility bill, it's going to save you money. Sign me up.
There's certain like things about, I know hempcrete, I've studied a little bit about that, and what that is doing is it's amazing for the you know, because it's super durable. It's saving a ton of energy, and it's actually much more affordable long term because you have that insulation and heat and AC just get insulated better. You're not losing these different energies. It's really interesting. So you know, it's more affordable. Is there going to be a time where you decide, well, you know what, maybe the homes that we're making are just that much more better for the community in long term? Can we educate the market a little bit about why we're pushing these things? Are you going to turn to that a little bit, or do you think you're just going to, hey, these are the options, leave it to I guess the developers and then the market to decide?
First of all, I want to give you an exclusive. If you're into hempcrete, we're now experimenting. We're now experimenting in the market.
I think we talked about it last time, because I talked with a developer who was using it, right? And he was explaining to me all these different, and I'm like, okay, man, like this is kind of interesting. And then he told me it's only used in Europe, and now it's coming to the US and other places, other markets. It's really interesting stuff.
Now, what's really interesting is in Mozambique, okay, weed grows like weed. Okay,
right.
So hemp grows like weed. So literally, it is so fast growing. It's so whatever. So it makes complete sense as a product, which is one of the reasons why we're testing it. So but it's looking at that. So it's a really interesting, technology, but it has to meet the market need. Exactly. And so what we did so our whole objective is to, again, we've been talking about it. It's about setting objectives and working towards those objectives and understanding that we may not meet them immediately, but we're still all working towards them. So the 2 brick homes that we built were already moving. They in terms of, we've done it according to the EDGE building standard from the IFC, from the International Finance Corporation. They have a standard by which you can measure environmental improvement. So we wanted to lay in the foundations for investors so that we can tick boxes. So environmental box, there's some validation of that. It's not just take our word for it. Okay, we can take that, put it onto the chain, it's verified, etc. So these things are laying, what we're talking about, laying foundations. But the building's already between 20 and 40% improvement environmentally, even though they're built with traditional materials, more traditional materials, and with market acceptance. So these are completely accepted by the market, but they're already an environmental improvement. So we can't jump to 100% improvement yet, but we can get to 40% and the market still wants it. And so it's about practical reality. And again, just what you're saying, these are the challenges on the ground. These are the kinds of things we've got to work with, tested,
so much. And move on. Oh my gosh. I think about projects like you guys, and I think about some of the, just the men and women I've talked to who are, in the carbon credit industry, looking at blockchain, thinking about discussing things with Vera or Golden and trying to get the procedures in place. There's so much like infrastructural kind of work going on to connect the blockchain, these real things happening in real life that the blockchain kind of solves with carbon credits in some ways. Like there's some kind of fishiness that happens with carbon credits. I'm sure you guys are aware. And there's like a problem there. And I think the transparency of the blockchain could be leveraged, or a lot of people believe that too. It's not like a new thing, but that's kind of, and then, the access to capital where you guys are coming from. There's just there's so much work being done by projects like you guys. I got to just give you credit, because I know that it probably takes a lot to identify these processes and think ahead too on like what needs to be built infrastructurally. And my hat off to all the teams, man, that are taking the reins in their own hands and doing the work.
Thanks, guys. And I mean, I think that's, maybe the last thing on challenges that I'd like to add is, our vision is to become a decentralized platform. That is really where blockchain shines. But we realize that along that journey of getting there, there's a lot of things that need to be tested and a lot of, challenges that need to be overcome. And so that is a lot of why we kind of try to isolate certain things. We've chosen to build a partner on the ground that we can trust, that we know will deliver, that has a track record, etc. Let's keep that. I mean, as anyone who's even done, high school science knows, you need to keep something constant to test other variables.
Yeah, exactly.
So we don't want, and listen, my science doesn't go much beyond high school, but so
That's all
don't
you
tell
need,
me.
I always say, right? All good.
But being able to hold that constant and then test other things. How, one of the big challenges we had was, how do we offload crypto in Mozambique, where there are no exchanges and not
The
much exchange
on-ramps and
support,
off-ramps, yeah.
on ramps and off ramps. And so we can start to test these things. And then once we kind of understand a lot of these changes, we can mix it up with another partner in another market who we trust. And then we can kind of have a blueprint of, this is what success looks like. This is what it looks like to bring on a good creative partner that can add value to the NFT. This is how it should be modeled. This is the kinds of developments that you need. These are the kinds of partners. And then really, I hope I'll have a job like Glenn where I can just sit back and, and relax and have it decentralized.
Listen, man, you're being humble here, because what you guys are doing is so important. It's the only way it gets done, is like just identifying these little pockets, building out, identifying what infrastructures need to be built, tackling them one at a time. And I think that's truly how blockchain and Real.Fi and all of these beautiful innovations and all of these old world systems are going to start to bridge. Is like teams like you guys just like taking one Lego, putting one brick on the time, and then soon enough there's going to be this ginormous Lego village that's called Earth, and all these things will be interconnected. It's the only way I think it does get done, because the governments aren't going to do this for us. Like we kind of can't, like they're really busy with their own stuff. Most of them are, right? So and it's not like they're really like trying to stop us either. It's like we have this weird time where teams like you can identify these problems, work with even officials at times, right? Or official organizations like, verified. It depends on what we're talking about, but I know for carbon credits, Vera, Golden, those are two examples. And like also connecting with the people, identifying the problems one step at a time. I think that's the only way it really does move forward. So just more props, because there's whenever you can find a team like that, you kind of just want to support them, like regardless of the investment. And then if there's like an investable thing about it, obviously that means more support for you guys too, right? So I mean, it's a really cool thing.
Yeah, and thanks. Yeah, thanks for that. Much appreciated. And one of the things that we're doing, if you look at our tokenomics, it's different. Even it's not standard, because we're taking 60% of our tokens will be utilized for housing on the ground, and that value is locked in the housing. Now, most people don't get that. So every housing project that we're doing, we're increasing the value within the ecosystem, and it's stuck there for 10 years. Now it's tradable at the above level, but from an infrastructure, from our processes, we're building that value in the ecosystem, not just ours, obviously, but the broader Cardano and now the world mobile as well. We're building out this ecosystem in building value into this and keeping it in the system. And that's a really interesting process, which I don't think yet, because it's different. When we put it out there, as people.
Can I ask you a question to break that down then? Because I'm thinking about that. Does that mean that as these communities start to develop and maybe they are more valuable, that locked percentage of these tokens also increase in value with the community value that grows too?
That's it.
So like there's like the simple, but there's probably some nuances as well that this can do, because I do know that is a really interesting model. It's different. It's very different.
I mean, I think what's interesting, that housing fund that represents 60% of the total supply of EMP that will be minted, or has been minted, that sounds like a big number. And we were doing the calculations, and just these 30 houses have locked up just over 1% of that fund. So, at 3,000 homes, we've started to lock up 60% of the tokens into smart contracts that will be paid out over a course of 10 years. Now, if you hold our token, I mean, this is obviously not financial advice and definitely not speculation on a token price, but the simple economics again, from a high school class is the supply will be decreased or locked up. At that point, the demand is, of course, continuing to grow. And that's part of how we expect the token to appreciate.
Is all of the supply, like you guys have some probably, liquidity pools and other things, like is all the supply on the market, or is there still inflation that's happening? Okay.
No.
So-
So the tokens that were
That's
earned
fine,
during
brother.
our that were earned during our ISPO and during our token sale had a 6-month lockup. Those are released in a linear model, so you can actually go into our website. You can see how much are available at any one time. So people have claimed those and they're out in the market. The housing amount that we spoke about, that sits in a wallet. Actually, all our wallets are named. We've got handles for those, so you can go and check. It's all sitting there, and we'll move into the smart contracts once the houses are funded. The operational fund that goes towards liquidity, there's some tokenomics around that. We'll obviously go to exchanges and ultimately come back into the project and into the housing fund. There's an allocation for the team, which hasn't been distributed, but has a 36-month lock-in period. I can run through all the tokenomics. There's obviously on our website. But in simple terms, it starts to mean, and I think this is again what is, I suppose, innovative, is that holding EMP or holding, supporting the project, you're not tied to any one house in Mozambique. You're not tied to even any one project. You're tied into the ecosystem. Now, admittedly, right now, that ecosystem is 30 houses in Mozambique, of course, but it's, that's with the plans in the pipeline, that's fast going to extend beyond Mozambique to some of the other countries we've touched on. And then you are in a position where if there is a default in an individual house in Mozambique, you're not fully exposed to it, because that's not your,
exactly.
It's in the way that a property fund might be structured. If one tenant doesn't pay their rent in a Berlin shopping center,
you're not screwed.
That's the whole of I don't know, CBRE or one of the big property funds doesn't go under, or you don't it's not such a butterfly
Like
thing.
it's like what the comparison I make to that concept then is, it's kind of like blockchains, like Cardano. The more stake pools we have, the stronger the network is. So it's like, as this project scales and you get different exposure in different areas and you have all these nodes of lease-to-owns, I guess, the network of Empowa gets actually stronger. It's magical. It's magical.
That's well put. I've never thought of it as nodes. I've never put it that way. That's a great way of actually describing it.
Because man, that's why I love it. We just come up with it.
Is that trademarked, your node description?
Oh, you guys can use it. You guys are doing too many good things. I mean,
okay.
I'm not gonna take. Listen, go for it, man. Whenever I look at I'm not gonna try to take anything, but whenever I look at the Empowa logo, I don't know if you guys ever feel this way, but it just feels like it could be like a household name. You know what I mean? Like there's certain real estate firms like EXP Realty, and like there's just it seems like it's got the name, it's got the branding, it's going off to a really good start. So like I just think that it could be such a big thing if you guys can just continue to kind of like having, not necessarily not make mistakes. I think making mistakes gives you data and you can pivot. But if you can just kind of stay on the course, like with some of these projects I'm looking at, like you guys, and I'm like, man, this could be a really big thing if they could just stay on the course to their mission and just like continue to learn and adopt and adapt, right? In this journey, there's some amazing concepts being developed here, and you guys are one of them for people to watch. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Thanks. And from our perspective, just, you asked earlier about my job. I've got the greatest job in the world. Really. I have the greatest job in the world because
I have the greatest job in the world. I do.
Because the ability of what we're doing, the excitement of what we're doing is it's, you can't beat it because
when you think about it, right? Like it's like once you, if you ever have a bad day or like whatever, it's like once you think about what you guys are doing, it's infectious. It's infectious.
That's exactly the point. And I always go, I always tell the team that if only I could bottle some of the responses from some of the people who've moved into the house, or, some of these stories which we could start sharing. When you start doing that, when you start realizing that a 7-year-old can sell a house because that's how much the pent-up demand is. When you start talking about these are the needs that are being met in a way that has this kind of exciting economic potential for the people who get involved, you go like, what? That's a dream. And it is. And it has always been a dream, but it's a dream, as you say, that we've taken step by step, trying to make a reality. And that's the objective. And that's why it's a fantastic job. It's just great.
I just can't believe that we're on a call right now because it's amazing. And the thing is, I think about it is you have to, I think if I was in your shoes or even on the team, I would be thinking like, okay, we got to kind of, stay true to obviously, the altruisticness of what this does, but also stay true to the businessology of this thing. And then the main thing is we just need to make this thing happen one piece at a time. And I think that those three elements, I think that really, there's not too much that I could see going wrong. It's kind of like all those things are in your control, which I love. Whenever I look at a project, are these things in their control? Well, these three are. So yeah, it's a pretty big deal, man. It's a pretty big deal.
Absolutely, thanks. And I agree with you because that's what we keep saying to the team. It's up to us to screw it up. It's up to us because we have it within our control, as you say.
Or to make it happen too, because
exactly. We've got it to make it happen, or to screw it.
Please continue going because this is changing the world. So I don't know if there's anything else, guys. We've had, I think, about an hour and 22 minutes. We definitely want to have you back on because this is my favorite thing, and I love talking to people from like just around the world in general, but also other people in this ecosystem building purpose-driven and business. Like there's this element of business I love. There's this element of purpose I love. So that's why I think Cardano is such a great fit for some of us who like those two things. And you guys are a great project for that, for example. Is there anything else that you might want to add to before? Yeah,
I think I'll just in the interest of sharing a little bit of details of the NFT, that's obviously now live right now. It's just to our core community who bought an early FC NFT, a founding community NFT, starting Monday the 17th, 18th. The World Mobile Earth Node operators have some exclusive access for 4 days, but starting the 23rd, it's really open to the general community. Anyone who wants to support our project, they can come in. The NFTs are priced 250 ADA and 50 EMP of our tokens. You'll need to hold both. All the details are on the website. But through that purchase, you're collected an NFT, as you mentioned. We think the artwork's pretty cool, but you're also really enabling the Cardano vision of real world impact in Africa. You're staking your claim as one of the first people to enable Real.Fi financing of housing, decentralized internet on the continent. Those are some serious bragging rights and something that can sit in your wallet long past the 10 years of potential earnings. And you can say kind of I was there. And then of course there's the whole rewards in line with the impact that you've made. And so I won't go into all those details, but those are all on the website. There's a community support question.
One thing too on that, it's like what I think sometimes we forget or hesitate to say in this space, and especially maybe someone like myself who's not part of the team, but it's still important and obviously not financial advice, but like these are the kind of NFTs that I think about for like people that are just getting into the financial realm or financial education and NFTs. It's like these are the kind that I think your investment, even if it doesn't return you anything, you're going to learn so much because it's a multifaceted NFT where you do have this interest of where the funds are going to the developer that's being paid and in what token that's being paid. And it just takes people down this kind of journey of like understanding the, what is actually generating that passive income / what is the story with this art. So I think these are the kind of NFTs that are great for people that literally just want to follow a project for the first time. And I'm not sponsored to say that, right? It's completely just, I'm just saying it right now because it is kind of interesting. Like there's a lot of JPEGs out there with no, and they're just a JPEG, but it's like a multifaceted. So I think people can kind of learn. I feel like if this was my first NFT, I could kind of like learn. I could learn a lot from just being in Discord and all the different aspects too.
Yeah.
So for whatever
Yeah.
that's worth.
And exactly that, we really are trying to push the boundaries of that JPEG. So we're really trying to take it to a whole new level.
Well, yeah, man. Like I just am big on education because I don't think we'll be as successful as we will be if we educate as many, people as we can, especially if they're in governance and stuff. So these are the kind of NFTs that could actually start the financial education path too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And ours is a video, it's not even a JPEG. So
yeah.
But yeah, thank you. Thanks for having us on. And like I said, it's always exciting to speak to somebody who shares our excitement, right? And obviously sees the potential. So we're excited. We're excited to come back and report back as we always do on, the results of what we've tried to achieve, the impact on the ground. And I am excited to have a non-grainy, high quality call with Richard in Beira using World Mobile Internet, and where he can interview the families who are, in our homes. So that's kind of motivating me each day.
I can't even imagine like what that will do. I feel like the other thing too is like it's not going to take a lot of time for the I guess relatively the small community of Mozambique, and then extend that out to surrounding territories and even countries to start to hear the name and brand Empowa. Like I feel like that's already kind of probably happening just because you guys are really solving this really like big problem. And who is Empowa? Who is this Empowa crew coming in here solving this big problem? Like I feel like you're going to spread pretty quickly, and once the content comes out with these stories and people that are actually their lives are changing, yeah, man, that's really interesting. This the branding and marketing of what your mission is could scale pretty quickly, which would onboard people to Cardano potentially too. So there's some. But why don't we get? Sorry, I don't want to keep you guys too long. Why don't we get Glenn's final words here before I call him Greg again?
Thanks, and just appreciate your time, and thanks for your support. And it really is, as you said right at the beginning, it's ironic that in the space you need to trust in the trustless society, in the trustless environment, and the trustless, we got to trust, because it's a challenge, because just like Greg said, you at the end of the day, to a level, you've got to back the team that's putting forward some stuff and say, do I trust this team who has the objective to deliver? And just one of the things we want to say is we're Africans. We understand the issues, and we really are trying to solve it, to use this technology in innovative ways to solve a problem that has seemed unsolvable to date. And that's the part that excites me, is that this technology has the opportunity to really transform in the financial systems. And it's through this kind of usage that we're going to be able to do that. And it's real world usage, real world implication, but it's new technology and new thinking. And so, we keep saying we're building the airplane as we're trying to fly. It's a challenge. And as you say, we're going to make mistakes as we go, but our intention is to deliver. Our intention is to maximize value for those who contribute, while not extracting from people on the ground who can least afford it. So that's the balance that we constantly walk in. It's the road that we constantly walk in, is how do we do that without extracting it from the ground, which is the traditional model. I'm going to charge you 30%. That's not our objective. Our objective is to make it affordable, but to create as much value as we can.
Every time I hear that, I just freak out because it's ridiculous that it's 30%. And I knew it was that because of our last interview, but every time it's, I think I just really, I just really am rooting for you guys for real. And I think that you're in a kind of niche here where you can make those mistakes because as this scales, you're kind of covering your bases in ways for all the token holders of the ecosystem. And there's not been a blueprint. So yeah, I would encourage people in your community to definitely have some empathy as you guys kind of figure out some things too, because that's what's going to allow also, the team to be more successful, is give them some, potential breathing room. That makes sense to me as well. So yeah, man, Glenn and Greg, thank you guys so much. We had an incredibly fun conversation, I think, personally. And it was it was exciting. And there's a lot. It sounds like 30 homes. There's the NFT sale, and that's all on the website. That's all in the Discord. So maybe I'll leave those preliminary links for people in the description of wherever I put this. And that's pretty much it. So I guess that's the show. Glenn, Greg, thanks so much for coming. That's Empowa. Okay, that's like a house. It looks like a household name. Like it looks exactly like a household name. So take that for what it's worth. And we're out, guys. I'm gonna pause the recording. That's Jay Crypto, Glenn, Greg. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.